Why did Chelsea struggle in the centre of midfield in their 5-2-3 defensive shape? Why and how did Graham Potter change to a 4-3-1-2? How Chelsea began to get the upper hand in the second half? And what were the key areas and players of this game? All of that will be coming up in this video. But before I get into that, I have got a special announcement from the sponsors of today's video, OneFootball, which is now the place where on a Saturday night, if you're in the UK or Ireland, you can watch one free Italian Serie A game each weekend. As well as this, you can also use all the other football features that I've spoken about before with OneFootball. So if you are interested in watching European football, but just don't have anywhere to watch it, then you can go to the competition page linked in the description, and you can check out the free match that will be streamed this weekend. You can also watch highlights of all the Serie A games, and near live instant clips as well whilst the games are going on. And by downloading the OneFootball app, you will be helping to support the channel. So from the start of the game, we saw Graham Potter's side press United in a fairly passive 5-2-3 zonal shape, with the front three of Sterling and Mount, either side of Aubameyang holding advanced narrow positions, looking to stop Varane and Lisandro Martinez being able to move forward with the ball, while simultaneously looking to use their positioning to cut off the passing lane into United's midfielders in behind. Now this zonal pressing approach differed to how Ten Hag's side pressed at the other end, and within the first 20 to 30 minutes it was clear with this approach that Chelsea was struggling to stop United being able to play right through the centre of the pitch. This is because United completely outnumbered Chelsea in the centre of midfield, with Casemiro sitting behind Aubameyang, able to move to open up a passing lane, and because Chelsea were only using a double pivot in the centre of midfield, Casemiro the majority of the time would have time to turn with the ball because neither Jorginho or Loftus-Cheek could push right up tight onto Casemiro, because this would obviously leave a massive amount of space in behind for Eriksen and Fernandes and even Antony to drop into. However, by Jorginho and Loftus-Cheek holding deeper positions, they weren't really able to do either. They weren't able to stop Casemiro being able to turn or him passing into players in behind them. As with Casemiro being enclosed by Chelsea's front five pentagon, Eriksen and Fernandes would simply pick up positions in the half space, opening up a passing lane between Jorginho and Mount on the right and Sterling and Loftus-Cheek on the left, and so United had joy progressing the ball through Chelsea's system into the final third. When United were able to play through Chelsea's flat front five, they essentially had a 3 versus 2 against Chelsea's midfield double pivot, and this was the key to United's dominance within the first 30 to 35 minutes. Now we did see Chelsea's wide centre-backs trying to move out onto United's players sitting in the half space, but because Eriksen was floating from deep to advanced positions and Antony would drift infield from the right flank, it was incredibly hard for the Chelsea wide centre-backs Chalobah and Cucurella to constantly be able to stop players being able to turn when they received the ball in these positions. United's press on the other hand was a lot more successful. Ten Hag's side pressed in a 4-1-4-1, a slight change from their usual 4-2-3-1 pressing shape, and this was done to allow United to man-to-man press Chelsea's midfield double pivot, with Eriksen and Fernandes sitting on Jorginho and Ruben Loftus-Cheek, with Casemiro following Mason Mount as he drifted over to the half space on United's left, as Diogo Dalot would follow Sterling should he move into Chelsea's left-sided half space. Chelsea would shift to a 2-4-3-1 in the build-up phase, with Cucurella coming wide, allowing Chilwell to push further forward down the left flank. Ten Hag's wide attackers would remain high and narrow, allowing them to move to press Chelsea's centre-backs when they received the ball, and United were able to halt Chelsea's ball progression through the centre of the pitch with this man-to-man press. However, we did see Chelsea able to beat United's high press when they worked the ball out wide, and this was because with Sancho applying pressure to Chalobah on the left side, because Shaw did not push high enough up the flank to sustain the pressure, due to the fear that if he pushed up, Mason Mount would make a move into that right-sided channel. This allowed Chalobah to play the pass into Azpilicueta and for him to motor the ball forward down the flank, progressing Chelsea out of their defensive third. However, around the 35th minute mark, Potter opted to change systems, bringing on Kovacic for Cucurella and switching to a 4-3-1-2 system, or what you could say is resembling a midfield diamond, with Mason Mount at the point and Jorginho at the base, with Loftus-Cheek and Kovacic either side. With this defensive shape change, this allowed Chelsea to man-to-man press United, and by ditching the zonal pressing, Chelsea were able to cut off United's forward passing options through the centre of the pitch a lot more effectively, almost immediately after the change was made. Now Aubameyang and Sterling would apply pressure to the centre-backs, with Mason Mount now man-to-man pressing Casemiro, as Kovacic and Loftus-Cheek behind would sit between United's central midfield and the flanks, being responsible for shuttling out to the flanks to close down Shaw and Dalot when they received the ball. Using this narrow diamond shape, we saw Chelsea immediately able to win the ball back high up the pitch, from where a cut back from Mason Mount into Raheem Sterling almost led to Aubameyang getting a big chance. And so it's obvious that man-to-man pressing United is a lot more successful than going for a zonal option. It did take United a while to adapt to the change in the Chelsea defensive shape, however we did see United able to find a way of progressing the ball out of their defensive third, and it came from splitting one of the two forwards, Aubameyang or Sterling, and Mason Mount, and releasing the fullbacks, instructing them to burst forward past the Chelsea wide midfielders, moving across to confront them. And so we saw both Shaw and Diogo Dalot excel when the ball was switched, and they were able to efficiently drive into space, progressing the ball up the pitch. Despite United having joy progressing the ball down the flanks against Chelsea's extremely narrow diamond shape, United were no longer able to create as much in the final third, as they were when their attacks were being progressed through the centre of the pitch, with Eriksen and Fernandes, and throughout the start of the second half we saw United having similar problems to the ones they experienced against Newcastle and Everton, being able to progress the ball into the final third via the flanks, but then unable to create anything of substance when they get into these positions. However, Ten Hag clearly felt that with Chelsea now having 4 players against United's 3 in the centre of the pitch, that United were at risk of being overrun when Chelsea had the ball, because as Loftus-Cheek and Kovacic pulled out from the central positions, this would drag Eriksen and Casemiro apart and open up the space between them for Mason Mount to receive the ball in, with United's centre-backs unable to move out of the back line to confront Mount due to both Sterling and Aubameyang being positioned centrally. Ten Hag brought on Fred for Sancho, moving Fred alongside Casemiro, and now using Fernandes from the left, with Eriksen now ahead of the double pivot. And I think Ten Hag did this as much because Sancho was largely ineffective throughout the game, as well as to add a bit more defensive solidity to the centre of the park, quite a conservative tactical move, which showed that Ten Hag may be happier with simply containing Chelsea rather than necessarily taking an undue risk to win the game. If at this stage Ten Hag did want to make an aggressive tactical change to try to win the game, I think it would have come by looking to exploit Chelsea down the flanks, trying to isolate the fullbacks in 2v1 situations against United's wide attackers and fullbacks, and doing this through quick switches of play. If the ball was on the left with Luke Shaw, for example, Loftus-Cheek will obviously be the player to move across to close him down. However, Kovacic on the other side will now take up more of a central midfield position, meaning that if United can work the ball back and get a quick switch of play over to the right side, Kovacic is going to struggle to be able to race across and stop Dalot being able to motor forward down the open flank, and then working with Antony down the channel to get in behind Ben Chilwell. And I thought bringing on Fred was the right tactical move and made early on in the second half, which shows decisiveness from Ten Hag after Graham Potter had made a drastic change in the first half. With Chelsea now having 4 players in the centre of the pitch, United needed more energy, athleticism and overall greater physicality to deal with Chelsea's quick transition in attack through the centre of the pitch. And so by bringing on Fred alongside Casemiro and shifting Eriksen ahead, in theory you'd still have Eriksen's ball progressing ability in possession alongside Fernandes' creativity in the final third, although you now have another combative player alongside Casemiro. And the thing about Fred is that he's always involved in crucial actions in the opposition half, but more just through sheer willingness rather than his ability. And whilst there are some things he does that do come off, there were a number of times in this game where I felt like Fred completely halted or slowed down United's quick transition in attack, via taking too long on the ball or playing passes to on-running players behind them. And I would say this is where quality squad depth and quality alongside versatility is so important. Whilst it was the right move from Ten Hag to bring on a combative central midfielder, the issue for United is that even though Fred is their best option in this role, he's still not at the level needed in my opinion, certainly in possession, as United need players who can move the ball forward quickly via the right pass selection and weight of pass as well, which I often felt was lacking with Fred. A perfect player to bring on in this situation would have been someone like Konrad Laimer at RB Leipzig, who like Fred has the athleticism and arguably even better defensive contribution, the kind of which Ten Hag needed during this phase of play, but Laimer is a much better technical player and a lot more effective at progressing the attack forward, which overall would have allowed United to take advantage of their counter-attacking opportunities. And so it's no surprise that United's 2 best opportunities came from their quick transition in attacks after turnovers, which came about through their pressing. Here we see an example of United's counter-press. As the ball goes into Ruben Loftus-Cheek in the centre of the field, the United players in the centre swarm around him, but it's Casemiro who wins the ball back, pushing up to apply the pressure to Loftus-Cheek, and he is able to win the ball back, because by pushing up he's left a massive space for Sterling and Mount in behind, so he has to win the ball from this position. He does, however, he wins the ball back, and from here he moves the ball on to Bruno Fernandes, who is United's key creator in these positions, and in this game he showed exactly why, as he was able to play a first time exemplary weighted pass, finding Rashford's well-timed run in between Cucurella and Chalobah, and his first touch puts him in a 1v1, and he should score by either getting a better connection with his dinked finish, going around Kepa, or slotting it through his legs. And I think in this exact type of situation we would have seen Ronaldo put the ball into the back of the net. And so whilst we have to consider Rashford's contribution to the press and his superior output outside of the box to Ronaldo, you also have to factor in the finishing ability that is lost with Ronaldo not being in the side. And United created two clear-cut chances in the first half that they really should have taken. The Rashford chance was the first, but the second came from United's 4-1-4-1 press in the first half, forcing Chelsea out to the right side and then giving Azpilicueta no option other than to go long. And Martinez attacks the long ball upfield like a pit bull, heading it into the path of Bruno Fernandes, who is incredibly efficient with these type of situations. I mentioned earlier that I thought Fred needlessly slows down the game, taking too many touches or being indecisive with his forward passes, but in Bruno Fernandes it's the exact opposite. Here he seamlessly allows the ball to roll across his body, and at the exact right time he slots a well-weighted pass, releasing Antony, who is excellent at making bursting runs wide of the centre back when United transition the attack quickly. Here he races through on goal, and on his left foot he probably finishes past Kepa, but on his right he rather shanks it wide behind the goal, and it's another big chance that United have missed. Later on in the game we did see Ten Hag bring on McTominay, using him in front of Fred and Casemiro, with McTominay and Fred being the players to push up onto Chelsea's deeper line midfielders during the man-to-man press. And it was a more conservative move from Ten Hag, as United at this stage of the game were now using Bruno Fernandes as a centre forward with Elanga and Antony either side of McTominay behind him, and so it's fair to say that Ten Hag was prepared to sacrifice individual offensive ability and try to see this game out as we closed into the last 10 minutes. However, this would backfire with McTominay giving away a penalty after wrapping his arms around Broja from the corner, a pure moment of incompetence from McTominay practically handing the game to Chelsea on a play. Jorginho scores a pen, and from here it looks like after wasting those big chances, one mistake will cost United the game. But before I go on, I do now have a clips channel where I will be uploading shorter content from my previous videos, and I'll even release some clips of some future videos that should be coming out soon, so subscribe to the channel, it will be linked in the description, and follow my Instagram and Twitter for more content as well, those will all be linked in the description below. Casemiro's header late on would rescue a hard-earned draw for United in a game that saw both managers show their tactical decisiveness by making big tactical changes early on in the game. And I think whilst Potter certainly went into the game with the wrong approach from a pressing point of view, we can see that going into half-time Chelsea had recorded an XG of just 0.13 to United's 0.60, and his change of defensive shape did allow Chelsea to control the play more, and in the second half it was a lot more even. Chelsea did record an XG of 1.20, though this was due to the penalty that Jorginho scored. Prior to that incident it was fairly even. United had an XG of 0.67 to Chelsea's 0.44, showing that it was indeed a tight game with not a lot of big opportunities. I thought both Dalot and Shaw were fantastic again for United, becoming key to United's ball progression, with opposition sides now looking to man press United centrally, forcing them out to the flanks as Newcastle, Arsenal and Chelsea have all done. Casemiro was fantastic in midfield yet again, just being so much better defensively in midfield than anything United had before. Hopefully Varane isn't out for a sustained period, as he was very good alongside Martinez as well, up until his injury. Fernandes I thought should have had at least one assist from either Antony or Rashford, and I think looking back on the game, Ten Hag will feel like United played well enough to win this game, but didn't have the quality on the day to take those chances.